Perfect. All right. So good afternoon. Good morning.
Good morning.
I shared with some of you that there was a rodent emergency and drama near my office. So if I appear a bit out of sorts, it's because I'm, terrified of rodents and still getting over that dramatic experience. So if you see a rodent, don't send it. Send it towards somewhere else, just not towards me. All right, enough about that. More seriously though, I expect Ed Messerly to come for an observation, so he might be coming in. I'm not sure if this will happen or not. And about today, what I have planned for us is we're going to finish the events chapter. I have a couple more topics about events to share, a couple examples, and then event delegation and the event object. And my hope is that for the second part of the class, I would like to, again, give you a lap time. You have two homeworks that are pretty similar and will allow you to use the event knowledge. And also have some pointers. So we haven't talked about I think Daniel was using it, the window on load and a couple of different things. So I'll give you some pointers and then let you work and certainly you can collaborate with your neighbor and discuss. So that's the plan. Any questions or comments? I guess I'm curious, how many of you finished the homework or made progress? Okay, maybe if you are interested to show that, well, no, actually, never mind. We won't be showing the solution, but you can maybe give some pointers how you arrived at it. Anything else? Did you find it, Daniel? I know I saw your email, but
We gotta register for classes today. Or the registration is opening up.
Thank you for the reminder. Yes, register for classes. I don't know how many of you can use this class, but I'm teaching a Java 2 class, which, okay, awesome. So I might see some of you there. It's on Tuesday and Thursday, 3:30. It's a little bit strange time, but so ITC 155, if you're interested in Java 2, if you've taken Java 1, I'll see you there. And I think that's all. So thank you for the reminder. Go register for classes. Sooner rather than later is better, so you can make your selections. Right. All right. Let's see here. In fact, let's start with an example before we continue with the new topics. There is one example with an event I would like us to start with because it's fun, and it's going to be determining the position on the page with coordinates. So let's start with bringing up brackets. Do you have your chapter 6 images by any chance? Or did they get saved? Or? Oh, thank you. Here we go. Let's see how shall we do this. Well, it would be better to have the images and the CSS, so is the chapter 6. So let's go ahead and if they're not saved on your machine, then let's download them. And everything appears very slow for me again. Folder. Today is the 2/13/17.
We want the CSS too.
So yes, we want both. And they will be in last week's materials. Aaron, as a TA, if you have any thoughts how this process can be made more efficient? I mean, students could bring it from home, I suppose.
Yeah. As far as getting the files from the book?
Yeah, just getting the files from the book.
I can think when I took this class, I downloaded the whole file of all of them and put them in my JavaScript folder, so I could just go in and grab them and pull them out.
That might be more efficient. It's just
Like with PHP, it was the same story with all the files from that book. Also, if you like, I keep my weeks organized. So like what I did is I just took week 6 and I duplicated it into week 7, and all my files are still inside.
because the CSS is in the images are mostly the same, right? Okay. Okay, so new folder or new file rather. And then we're going to name this file position.html. So save as. And we're going to save it in your project folder. So position. Okay, students, we're now, please give me your attention now. Thank you. Position.html. All right. All right, and so again, the purpose of this exercise is going to show you a couple of events that will allow you to track the position of your mouse cursor on the screen. So I thought that might be a fun example to do together. All right, so we'll start with the HTML. And again, your CSS and your images for chapter 6 should be in the folder, right? So this is going to be titled mouse position. And add a link to your to the CSS file. Don't make the same typo as I did last time, and many of you repeated. So this is a rel, not ref. Okay, and then in the body, I'm going to have a div, excuse me, with the ID of body. And inside the body div ID, not div, ID of stats. And so in the stats div, we're going to add several input fields where the stats about the position will be produced on the screen. So the first one will be screen X. It's going to have input, type text. ID of SX. So the coordinates are, maybe I should mention this. When we measure coordinates on the screen, we have a coordinate system. So X and Y coordinates, and it always starts in the top left corner. So the top left corner of your screen is going to be with coordinates 0, 0. So you start from 0, 0, and then X and Y coordinates. So keep this in mind. Okay, and then the screen Y position. And so this will be input of type text again, an ID of SY. And we're going to add a span with a class of divider. This is just visual. So we're going to be able to obtain coordinates for the screen, and then for the page, and then for the client. So we're going to have 3 different sets of coordinates. So the first one is that we are setting here is for the screen. So screen X and screen Y. And then I add a page. Again, this is not getting the coordinates. This is where the coordinates will be displayed after we get them. So page X. And again, input for the type of text. And ID is the X coordinate of the page. And page Y is going to be the Y coordinate of the page. And then you can copy the span divider and paste after the page. And then the last set is going to be the client. So the client is going to indicate the position of the cursor within the viewport. So the viewport is, are you familiar with, you should be, but what is the difference between the page and the viewport? Anyone? Eric.
Viewport is just what you can see at the time.
The viewport, that's exactly correct, is what you can see at the time. So we have the screen, we have the page, and then now we're going to have the viewport coordinates. So this is going to be a client X. And again, input type text, ID CX. And client Y. So close the stats div after all these client input fields, and then let's add the div with the ID of page. And again, this is going to be a grocery list. It's not really relevant here, but so just add some content here by groceries. And a URL with several items. You can make up your own list or just go with this one. Just add a few more items here. And then what I would like to do is, and what we should really always be doing is, once we're done with HTML, the static HTML, let's test our page to make sure this works before we add the script. So that's a good tactic I'll suggest for you. And this way you can at least know if there is a problem, it didn't happen before you added the JavaScript. So it can help you a little bit pinpointing which direction you should be looking, right? And maybe add a couple more here. Strawberries and rice. Okay, so this all goes inside the div with the ID of page. And then we're going to add a script before the closing body tag. Okay, so just one quick correction. This is not a div with ID of body, but this will be just the body. So please careful here, because this is something we need to change. Delete line 8 altogether, and we just have a body with the ID of body. There is no div with ID of body. So body with div stats in it, and then next div page. And then you need to delete the corresponding closing tag for the div with ID of body that we just deleted. So let's save this, and before we add the JavaScript, I'm going to test out to make sure this looks okay. All right, this looks about what I would expect. So you should have something like this when you test your static page. And now, assuming this works, then let's add our script. So I'll add it here. We're going to have a variable. SX is going to be equal to documents dot get element by ID of SX. And this is the element to hold the screen X. And then we need to add variables for all the other divs that we created that are going to hold the data. So we have a variable for SY, and I will just copy and reuse here. Yes, Daniel?
Try Control D when you're on the line without selecting any of it, just put the cursor on it and it duplicates it. It makes it really quick.
Control D? Okay, I'm doing great. So we can try this or just Control V, but just copy it so it's faster. Copy the document.get element by ID, and then we just need to change the ID of the element here. Okay. We have SX, SY, then we have a variable PX. And again, the name of the variable is going to correspond to the name of the div where we are going to display the information. PX and then PY. And then the same for the client. CY. All right, so first we've declared our variables, and in fact, I'm just going to make one comment here, declare variables to hold elements, to hold nodes, reference to nodes. And then the next part is going to be to declare the function. Okay, so now we're getting in the vicinity of events. So I want to remind you that when we work with an event, we're going to have a certain event from the JavaScript available events, and then we write our own function that is going to be the event handler when that event is triggered. And in this case, we're going to create a function called show position. And this function is going to take an event object. So the event object is an object that is available to you from JavaScript. And it has useful information about the event, including, if we have time, we can do an example, error messages associated with the event. So we're passing the event. And then we're going to call a value property of the node. So if the value property, and this is something you'll be using for your homework if you haven't already, is going to be a way of updating the content. So we update the content with the value property. And we're going to set it to event dot. And it turns out that how are we going to get the positions is going to be by calling properties on the event object, such as screen X. And this is the screen X is going to provide the information about the property on the X coordinate on the screen, right? So these are a couple methods, properties that I would like us to look at the documentation, but let's finish. We have a few more lines. Let's run the example, and then we're going to look up the documentation so you can see the description of the event object and then all these properties we're using. Are you okay so far following along? Do you have any questions so far, what we're doing? All right. So this is screen X, and then it's going to be repetitive, maybe, well, it's not exactly, it's different names for the screen and page, so let's just type them, I guess. So then the SY value is going to equal to event dot screen Y. Maybe one thing I should point out is that the reason we are able to call those properties is because we passed the event object as an argument to the function, right? And then we have the PX value is equal to event dot page X, and PY value event dot page Y. And the third group will be CX dot value client X. And you're noticing here that when you press the dot, these properties are available to you as a drop-down, right? All right, so this is what we did here. We're updating those elements with the coordinates in our function. And this is the second part of the code of the script. And then the third part will be to actually set up the event we're listening to with the function we just created. So set up event with the function event handler, with event handler. And then we're going to start by calling get element by ID, and we're going to use the body That's why we gave it an ID. And then we're going to use the add event listener method, which is a built-in method. And it allows us to pass as arguments the type of event. So we're going to want, in this case, mouse move event as the first argument. Let's see if we get some assistance here. No, all right, we'll look it up. And then we call our function by the name, which is show position. And then we pass false for the event bubble. And now we have created a bind between the mouse move event and the event handler function, which we wrote and which is called show position. So let's test this out and see if it works, and then we'll look up some of these properties and methods that we used here. Okay, well, sure enough, this seems to. Oh, I'm missing one, so that will be fun to figure out.
Oh, I think you said values.
Okay, that's why. So most of these guys are working, and I have a values instead of value. So thanks, Aaron. And reload, and now everything is working. So that's what you would like to produce when you run your script.
If you mouse over like the lower half of your screen, does it stop?
Well, it shouldn't stop. It's going to change the viewport, right? Is yours stopping?
Yeah.
All right, I'll take a look. Check first if you have any errors.
Outside the viewport it stops.
Well, how can you go outside the viewport if you're in a...
Make your window smaller.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, this is only going to capture the viewport. Yeah. So you have to be, in fact, the page will stop too because you're not on the page now, right?
Mine doesn't work below the page, dude.
After the last item.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mine doesn't either.
So let's take a couple minutes here to get this working for everyone and answer any questions, and then we're going to take some time to look up the documentation for these properties.
I think he's showing how, like, when you go beneath rice, it won't track it. But you go right above rice, and it grabs it. But not here. Which I think is just, is it because it's just inside the div? Or should do the whole new content?
Well, we are selecting the bodies, so yeah, sure.
Mine does the same thing.
So, right.
So it's like,
My screen actually screen why work, but nothing else does.
So double check. Here is the code. Go ahead and double check that you didn't make any typos. This is all the value property, and make sure that these are all with uppercase of the letter, and double check the spelling here. That's what I'll start. Was there any other question? Just get out of the way. So I like this example because it shows a lot of different things at the same time without having to write, too much code. So let's. I think it's a good. It's an efficient use of our time.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it was funny from the other day when I couldn't see that.
Use the words, but
Is this the old way of getting in?
yeah.
I guess what confused me was getting the info from here and into here. Like it makes sense up here. Is this the HTML? Yeah, because we were getting
This one though, he said the form process. That's the graphics form.
That's I guess that's the part that confused me. I was like, where do we get the form? But I guess it's where we get stuff. So like puts it in there like an object.
It's like basically sending the document form. See what we did.
Yeah, I haven't seen it have the whole thing. Honestly, I was really good at it from something I was reading online. We didn't go over quite exactly.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it is the one that has the old
Yeah, it's all right. Trying to understand this better. It seems like such a simple thing to do, but yeah,
like that's what like a form is. It's something that's HTML, but once it does something which is like HTML.
well, what I was running into was I had IDs on the input on these, but when I could get element by ID for the form, but I couldn't do it for the example. So I was wondering if that was like just as a name or originally I had. Oh, yeah, so originally I had like this.
One thing you may want to try, it's not perfect, but if you have a suspicion that you hear no errors on the JavaScript console and they don't know what to do, chances are there maybe in the HTML, and you can try to look at it before the error. You can try to copy the HTML in the validator, and then run it through the HTML validator, and this will tell you, oh, you get some errors. And again, it's about 85% effective or accurate, and then sometimes it will not be accurate. So I hope you heard me. Try running the HTML through the validator if you have a problem that is not associated with JavaScript. So the page is your document, and then the screen is how big the screen is. They may coincide or they may not, right? In this case, let's take a look at the coordinates here. So if I go all the way, so also note that as I mentioned, 0, 0 is the top. So here you're the 0, 0, and then the screen, here's the screen and the page.
So I didn't go 0, 0. Can you show me your 0, 0?
Yeah. So 0, 0 is always the top left corner.
But shouldn't be X and Y 0?
So the Y 0 would be, so this is I'm all the way to the X point, so this is 0. But I need to still go further up, as you can see, to get the Y 0. right? And in fact, it's not even allowing me. It
I
should.
thought they were like. So the client is what?
The client is the viewport. So is what you see on the screen, right? So your page will keep on, so you can have a different part of the page in the viewport if your page was longer and you were scrolling up or down, right? And again, as you go away from the top left corner, you have your, as you go towards the right, your X coordinates will grow, right? And then if you move your cursor down the page, your Y coordinates will grow. And it's not exactly 0, 0 up here, so that's just.
So the client is 0, 0 at least when I do it. So in there is about like.
Yeah, so here we go. I got it as well. Actually.
But I think it's.
So this is your viewport.
Yes, because the viewport. And if I make my screen bigger, for example, here's the 0, 0 still.
Right.
Just for the client, yeah. For my viewport.
And again, these coordinates are given to you by the browser, so we don't really have, we can display them, but we don't have control really what they say.
Yes.
But let's go ahead and take a look. Instead of, I would like you to take the time to look up together. Maybe should you do it together? Do we want to look up the documentation together, or I'll just give you a few minutes? I'll just give you a few minutes. Go ahead to MDN, and then I would like you to look up any properties or methods here in this code that you're not familiar with. So, for example, you want to look at the value, you want to look at the event object, and then these properties, right? Maybe I'll just look up the event object together. Event object, MDN. So actually your homework was, your online homework for this week that I posted is for you to look through the events here. So I'll let you do that. Let's see, looking for a better. I'll just search for this directly. Property. JavaScript. All right.
You're saying that passing the event through the HTML, like the button, that's like the old school way of doing it?
The one where you say is an attribute. If you say
like you put
on
it
load, yeah.
In your HTML button.
Right. So for example, on click is equal to the name of the function. This is the old school.
Okay.
Yeah. So here the window screen X and screen Y properties that we used. So just take some time to look up the documentation and let me know if you have any questions. And then we have the value property. Okay. I had a few more slides I wanted to show you. So I showed you this last time, but I think I would like to go over it again. And this would be the example. What if you wanted to pass an argument to your function? You need to use. Do you remember what we said you have to do? There is a workaround, pretty much. You need to use an anonymous function, and this is the workaround. And here is an example of the workaround, which is that instead of passing the event here, the anonymous function is going to get essentially wrapped around your custom function, and it allows you to pass an argument. Right? And we can do this example if we have time. Okay, I remember showing you about the different. Put this to review, I guess. Right? Do you remember any of this? In IE8, the name of the event listener function is different. It's called instead of add event listener, it's called attach event. So I just wanted to point this out. Okay. So there are two different types of event flow, and this is what we
What are you talking
about the IE8. Yeah, I did, but okay. So what I told you was that with the IE8 browser, traditionally Internet Explorer code was written in a different, essentially, form and just had different use of methods compared to at the time Firefox and Safari, right? So if you wanted to call that event listener method with, let's say, all the other browsers, you'd use add event listener. But if you were interested in IE8, that will not work because they don't support add event listener. Microsoft decided to name this function attach event. Right? So this means that the web standards are not followed because the browsers have their own implementations. And that's maybe not so much an issue anymore, but certainly it used to be a big issue in the past. And so I was pointing out to you that if you're working with, if your client base uses IE8, then you're going to need to have a condition where if the add event listener is available, you use add event listener. If it's not, then you have to use attach event.
So every time you use a function and they're creating an event, the if and the else should look like that.
Well, so not every time. Again, the point is, do you care about, do your users use IE8?
Okay.
Do they? I don't know. I don't know actually if anyone who uses it.
I just looked it up and
Thank you.
They're saying it's 3%, 3.21.
3.21%. So
But there's a whole 27% that's using other, compared to
Yeah.
Chrome or
right,
or Edge.
right. So there are still some users. And
What I usually do is set up Google Analytics, and then, after a few days, you could see what the traffic is.
Yeah,
and you could
that's the
decide
right-
which ones.
yeah, if you're in a real world environment, this would be the right thing to do. Or if you work in a large company, the project manager will come and say, we need you to support these browsers. So just something to be aware of. You don't need to use the attach event in our class, but at least now you're aware. about it. So, okay, so here is the event flow, and again, it can go from a more specific, such as an anchor tag, all the way up to the document, or it can go event. So this is called an event bubble. It goes from most specific to least specific. Or event capture is where the flow of the event is from most general to most specific. And this is not something that we really are concerned with in this class because we are working pretty much with one event at a time. But it could become an issue if you're trying to put together multiple events. So it's, again, something to be aware of. And
so for instance, you can specify somewhere which
yes,
bubble you want to be.
Indeed, you can. You'd specify it right. It's the last argument for the add event listener function. So it's the default. It's an optional argument. If it's true, it's event bubble, I believe, and you can make it false to change it to event capture. It might be the other way around, but that's where you would set it. Right. Good question again. All right, and so this was the event flow topic, and then let's talk a bit about the event object. So the event object is going to be an object that will tell you useful information you may need to know about, you know, the element and other things that happened around the event. So some of the properties of the event object, and this is what you'd be using, would be you can know what your target is, the type of the event, if it's cancelable. And then you have prevent default or stop propagation. Prevent default is a little more advanced topic where sometimes it's helpful to say, for example, let's say that you have an image that if you click on the link, it's going to open, the event is going to result in you opening a new page. But sometimes you may not want to pop up a new window. So you can call prevent default, and it's going to prevent the event from being executed when it's triggered, right? And then you can also use the event for error messages. So in this case here, the event listener is going to call the function, and then you can set up the target with first of all, you have to pass the event object, and then you can use the properties. And again, these are new properties and methods we haven't encountered, so I recommend look up as many as you can. Let's see here. Screen share. So event target property. I keep on going to W3 schools. Let's go here. And this is a reference to the object that dispatched the event. So here. Okay, so right here, this is a W3 schools, but it's a pretty good example. So what it does is you're going to, when you click on the, it is going to display an alert box. And in the alert box, it will tell you the name of the node where the event was triggered, right? And this is the style that we don't want to use, but it's a click event. So click on a paragraph, and then it tells you that the node name is P because we clicked on a paragraph, right? Would you like to unpack the example further, or is this clear what is happening here, Eric?
Why should we not use output?
Because it's outdated, and you want to use the click DOM, you want to use the different syntax. So instead of using an on-click attribute in the HTML, the recommendation is to set your, to use the DOM property click, right? So it's the same functionality, but you want to use the more updated syntax. I talked to you about this last time.
Okay.
Yeah. And you will see them. In fact, as you can see, they're still used on W3 schools and it will work. But the recommendation is to not use the syntax. All right, what else do we have here? I mean, there is a lot more to say about events. Let's do this. We're going to stop here with the events, and then we're going to have lab time, and then maybe if you're all done with your lab time, if you have interest, we can do a couple other examples with events together to show, for example, passing an argument to a function or how to use the event object. But I think now is a good time to take a break, and then after the break, lab time. Okay?
Could you show the list?
Yes, just 1 second here.